All right, and now we come to the purpose of our original meeting, which was that for the month of, was it February?
Yep.
That seems like an eternity ago.
I
Oh
know.
my gosh, the last week and a half or whatever has been like a month in its own. Yeah, so during February, I was inspired by something that I don't even remember, to be perfectly honest. Maybe just a thought, or an idea, or a journal entry, to try to tell the truth, be precise, eliminate hyperbole, and only, these are all sort of lumped in. These are like subcategories that I made as time went on, but to not talk about things I didn't understand. And I decided I'm going to try to do that for a month, the month of February. I picked a month because just in case it was like almost impossible to do, at least I would have some timeline to end it. So I texted you and you said that you would do it as well. And then we would get together at the end of it. It's been like a month since we ended it, but and we would just discuss how it went and what it was like and the struggles. So I'll let you go first if you don't mind. Um,
Uh, yeah, I would love to. I have something first.
okay.
So I have a gift for you
Really?
in honor of this discussion. I would have liked to hand you this in person,
Oh
but
wow.
due to COVID, it was impossible. So it's in a Kendra Scott bag. So the tasteful women in your audience will know that you are in for a treat.
I don't have any idea what this is. I'm so confused. Oh wow. What is that?
This is a mug with Rule 10:
Oh nice.
be precise in your
Wow.
speech. And of
Wow.
course, of course, best friends. I've got my own.
That's amazing.
So I will hand deliver this to you next time we're in New York.
Amazing. Did you have to make that or did you find it somewhere?
It was just one of those online merch shops that does. I think they do all of Jordan Peterson's merchandise. So they did the. They have a mug for each
That's
for each
amazing.
rule.
That's
So
awesome. Well, thank
yeah,
you. You're such a good friend and I'm very excited to have that and drink coffee out of it each morning.
yeah. It's very inspiring to do so.
Yes, I assume. Well,
But
that's awesome. Thank you. So how was your month of being precise in your speech, telling the truth, etc.?
yeah. So when you originally asked or kind of told me about your project, I mainly was focusing on the be precise with your speech. And the way I see it, tell me if you disagree with this. The way I see it is that is a kind of a subcomponent of tell the truth. That
Mm-hmm.
there's like tell the truth is the overarching rule.
Mm-hmm.
Be precise in your speech, I think, is a subcomponent of it. So I think they really uh, go hand in hand. But I was more or less focusing on the be precise in your speech, partly because due to just previous conversations we had and reading the book, the 12 rules for life. That is that I sort of already tried to implement the tell the truth
Yeah,
rule
yeah.
as I know you have. So is that kind of how you were approaching it as well?
Yes, it is. So all the subcategories like no hyperbole, all that stuff was just a way to be more specific about what I meant by tell the truth. Because tell the truth, as Peterson has some interesting takes on what it means to tell the truth and how there are multiple layers and levels of that. There's like black truths and white lies and things like that. So
Hmm.
I was trying to be as specific about all that as I could be. No hyperbole was like really difficult for me because
Yeah.
I am like one of the most hyperbolic people I know. It's just like it's so natural to me to just be like, there was like a million things wrong with that, and okay, there was four things specifically wrong with that. It's like so hard to do. So I wanted to see how difficult it would be for someone like me to do that. So I laid those out specifically so that it would be more clear and more clear in my mind as I say something hyperbolic to catch myself or to stop myself. And I didn't just say like, oh, I didn't lie. I mean, it was kind of a lie, but not really. And being precise, obviously, and not having hyperbole and helped with my vocabulary a lot too. I was trying to, not use vague words, which is, that was low on the list of mental capacity because it was hard enough to not lie. But I was like, okay, so I don't know about you, but for me, it definitely took uh, a good deal of mental capacity, like of energy, to complete this month, like, and really have it on the forefront of my mind. I don't know about you. That was me.
Yes.
It was like,
yeah, absolutely.
whoa.
Everything that I feel like I had to think through, and this is a good thing, but I had to think through everything that I was going to say. And then after I said something that I'd have to think back over it to see if had I followed my own rules. And I found myself, well, just having to speak slower, having to pause before speaking to make sure that I was being precise and not using vague language,
Yep.
and talking less. Like I found myself not opining when I otherwise could have on something that I shouldn't have because of I just don't know enough about it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that one to me is one of the hardest because like
Yeah.
so a conversation comes up among four coworkers,
Yep.
and it's like
Yep.
a fight to get in like interesting points, and so like you're just like grabbing at things that you heard, and to try to just make yourself look good in front of people.
Yes,
That's
it's
truly what it
It
is.
really is. There's like a whole social like aspect to this that I totally took for granted. That I like. I was like, oh my god, there's so many things where a coworker will come over and it might be as simple as and I mentioned this with my Sarah Taddeo podcast, but people will ask you something like, "Have you seen that movie?" And you say yes, and what you mean is, I know everything about that movie, and I should have seen it because it's a classic. But like, I already know everything about it, so yes, I've seen the movie, but I've never seen the movie, and that might be unique to me. Maybe normal people don't do that, but
Yeah.
I was like, in a conversation, a coworker would be like, "Have you ever seen, blah blah blah?" And I think I know like literally every detail. I've seen reviews about the movie. So yes, I've seen it. And so I would just say like, yeah. Cause I know I can like keep up with the conversation and it's not a lie. Like it's not a lie. So I could say that I've seen it even though I haven't. So I caught myself doing that like once or twice with coworkers where it's just like, no, I haven't seen it. And then you got to deal like, you haven't seen that movie? Oh my God. Like, it's like
Yeah.
things that you would just try to escape by telling like a little white lie. All of a sudden you find yourself trapped in. And it's been, that was like one of the things I was like, man, this is so weird. So many little things I know. And you notice those things about yourself that you never noticed before. So that was one weird thing I noticed. I was just like, man, I can't believe I would have in the past lied about seeing a movie. And it didn't feel like a lie. It just felt like this is like an easy way for me to escape the, oh, wow, I can't believe you haven't seen that movie. So I just, yeah, I've seen it. Yep. And I can keep up with the conversation. But in that February, March, I was like, I haven't seen it. It's so funny. It's like,
Yeah, I definitely noticed many times like
oh, I think you froze again.
to lie in something that really truly is unconsequential, but I just do not want to deal with having to say I didn't see the movie or whatever the example is.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just, but there's probably a problem inherent to that approach is that you eventually you start doing it on things that are consequential.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things I really liked as just a straight up positive was in that I couldn't talk about things that I didn't truly understand or that I wasn't 100% sure on. I said I'm almost certain like 1,000 million times, and that is hyperbole, but I did say it. I basically everything I said almost always started with I'm almost positive because I couldn't say I'm positive, and I still do that. Like I still that's become a part of my vocabulary is to say I'm almost certain unless I am absolutely certain. So when I was absolutely certain, it felt amazing because I knew that I was right. And so like I can think of like 3 times, like maybe one specific time, but like 3 times that I can guess over the course of the month where like with my coworkers, they would posit something and I would say, no, that's not true. And they were like, I'm pretty sure it's true. And I was like, I know. And one of them was with my boss. And and he actually, to his I don't know, non-credit, to his discredit, he never admitted that I was right, even though I was. I could not get him to admit he was wrong, and I just kept calling him out. I was like, admit that you're wrong, and he was like, nope, I'm not admitting, even though I proved it to him on every aspect. It was about tax returns. It was about how something is laid out in a tax return, about how bonuses are laid out in a tax return. And I started with, like I'm almost positive that this is the way it is, and I gave my reasons for why. And then I proved it to him, and I said, I'm now 100% positive that this is the case. And he was like, nope, I don't believe, nope. And I was like, shame on you. You should you shouldn't say things that you know aren't true.
Yeah, that's the problem. If everyone else doesn't follow the same rule,
Yeah, it leaves you with this awkward like, well, I know I'm right, and what I was gonna say ultimately is that at the end of the month, I felt more credible, because I felt like
yeah,
I had proved myself in 3 or 4 different ways to my coworkers, where every time I said that I was right, and it was never to prove a point. It was always just because I knew I was right. And when I didn't know I was right, I would always say like, I'm not sure, I have no clue. And so I feel like my credibility was like through the roof in at work
yeah.
for that month, because I was like, everybody was seeing when I was right, because I was like, everybody look over here, I know I'm right. Okay, this is like one of the few times that I could tell you I'm right. And so like I feel like, at least personally, my coworkers probably weren't paying attention, but to me, I felt like my credibility was like through the roof, because I was being very careful about what I was saying and when I was telling the truth. So that was
Yeah.
one cool thing that I noticed, was like, man, I feel like I'm like really credible at work right now. Even though no one was telling me I was, I just kind of felt like it. I don't know if
Yeah.
you had
Yeah.
anything
No,
similar,
no,
but
no definitely at work. Well, it's funny because it's like it is already something that is super useful for leadership. Is that you like people who are in leadership positions by definition don't know the details of like all the jobs that employees do. And so they have to, if they're going to be a good leader, they have to rely upon the expertise of those underneath them and they kind of collect information from
yeah,
different parties. So like the ability to, or the cognizance to be able to say, uh, I don't actually know if this is the case. So you're going to have to like interject here. You're going to have to. So I found myself doing that a lot with my team at work, where it'd be like, this is just opinion or thought I had, but feel free to like correct me.
yeah.
And it more or less elevates the people who are underneath you to start making better decisions. So yeah, I definitely felt a lot of use at work. So I wanted to back up a second, if you would let me,
Yeah, go for it.
and to kind of this will help give context to some of the other things that I noticed. But just to talk about so if speaking precisely is a subcomponent of telling the truth, like I guess I just kind of want to summarize how I see telling the truth, and then
Yeah,
would
yeah,
love to
good
hear
idea.
kind of like your own take on it, and maybe how it maps onto mine or not. And by no means do I want to get into defining truth, lest we get stuck in a
In a
quagmire that
loop.
we can't get out of. Yeah,
Well, is it
yeah.
true?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Though
that's a
I
good idea.
actually, I think at a later date, I have some really good thoughts on that, but I don't think they would be appropriate here
Okay,
for
well,
time reasons. But
yeah.
maybe I'll touch on that a little bit. So I kind of want to just talk about how I see telling the truth, find out how that maps onto you, and then bring that down to the level of speaking precisely and some of my findings for the throughout the month. So I actually have some notes here too, which is great, organized.
Nice.
So I'll lead with this comment and then unpack it a little bit. But like living a truthful life is living in such a way that your actions and your words are in congruence.
Okay.
And I think your actions and words are inextricably linked. And when you lie, you're misrepresenting your actions in a way to kind of defend your own reputation. But there's two different ways that you can lie. And this is just my own framework
Yeah.
for understanding it, is that so there's your words and your actions. There's two ways that they interact with each other. One is your words are downstream from your action, right? So
Okay.
you act in the world in some way, and then you speak about those actions. And did you lie about what you did? So if you did something wrong, and then you're forced to talk about it, are you going to cover it? You're going to tell a lie about what
I
you
got
did.
you.
So your
Yeah, I
words are
got you.
downstream of your actions.
Hmm.
But you can have obviously the converse, where your actions are downstream of your words. So if I promise that I'm going to do the dishes later today, but then I don't end up doing that, I have effectively lied because I said I was going to do something, and then I didn't do it.
Yeah, I would say, sorry, before you go on, just that there is just to, so I don't forget, in that instance, I would say that your intention is more important than whether or not you do the dishes. So if you, as far as it relates to upstream, downstream, so if you tell your wife you're going to do the dishes with no intention of doing them, that would be the lie, as opposed to you intend to do the dishes, but something happens and you don't end up doing the dishes. So your
Right.
attention is key. That's all.
Yes.
Continue.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's telling the truth is a lot more the truth. I guess the truth in general is a lot more obvious when it's your words being downstream of your actions for the exact
Right.
reason you just said, right? Because my wife might feel that my promising to do the dishes, but then the fact that something came up such that I had to leave the house, my intention was to do the dishes, but she might not feel that way. She might feel that I have indeed spoken a lie because my words and my actions didn't line up. So it's definitely a lot of times harder to evaluate for that reason. So okay, so the way I see speaking the truth then is that it is a guiding mechanism. So your words guide you to the right action. So now I'm going to map that onto the upstream downstream
Okay.
analogy. So in cases where your actions are downstream of your words, let me make sure I said that right. So in the cases where your actions are downstream, it's okay. Yeah. So it's obvious. So by speaking words, you're kind of committing yourself to an action. So just to go back to the dishes thing,
Yep.
I told my wife that I'm going to do dishes tonight. That it is now guiding my behavior because I feel kind of obligated to do that. So
got it. Yep.
Yep. So in the other situation where your words are downstream from your actions, I think the effect is the same, though it might be not as obvious. So a good example that I guess just to go back to the business environment or to work is that like this is me pausing so that I can be precise.
You're good. Take your time.
Okay, so let's say I have a project to get done at work, and the project goes. It takes much longer than it was than the due date, and so now my boss is asking me, okay, why didn't this get done in time? So I might have reasonable excuses that I can kind of supply, like, okay, I just didn't have enough resources. There was this cost overrun that I didn't see, and I'm just kind of covering up for the fact that I didn't work hard enough. And maybe some of those are those excuses are reasonable. I'm just sort of, but I'm using those excuses to cover up the truth that I didn't get it done. So I'm just kind of I'm using lies by my own behavior. So what I've found in my life when I committed telling the truth is that I now act in such a way that I don't have to lie about my behavior. So if I have a project that's due by April 30th, I am going to do everything I can so I don't have to lie. And that's often involves, very productive things like telling the truth earlier to say like, oh, I've only got 2 weeks left on this project. I'm going to go to my boss and say, hey, look, I'm running out of time because these unforeseen things happen. So I'm going to need to hire someone else to help me with this aspect of the project. It basically the reason why we lie about the things we've done is because we're trying to show the world that we're more competent, more intelligent, more accomplished, more ethical than we actually are.
Yes.
But when you commit to telling the truth that you're not going to misrepresent your actions, it forces you to act in such a way that you are more competent and intelligent and accomplished.
That is awesome.
It's just that commitment itself forces you to act ethically. And so I did actually start doing this where I was at work, which is I've got one great example of it, but that I was not going to try to, if I did do something wrong or miss some deadline, I wasn't going to try to like justify it with an excuse, no matter how reasonable the excuse might be. So I tried to find the email, but I have to submit this thing for payroll every 2 weeks, and I'm an accountant, so I'm kind of in charge of payroll. And so I had something going on, or whatever happened. I missed it, and so I was like a day late on submitting it. So he pinged me and was like, "Hey, can you send this to me?" And so I sent it to him, and I was like racking my brain for like, what is the truth behind why I didn't do it? Because I'm not going to misrepresent myself.
Yeah.
So I ended up typing something along the lines of, "Hey, Jason, sorry I didn't get this to you yesterday. The reason why I didn't get this to you is because I did not prioritize this on like in my day. Like basically, I just blew it off.
That's amazing. What an
Yeah, and it
amazing
was
email
like,
to get in your inbox.
oh, dude, I wish that's exactly what I said. I was like, I really wish I could like be in that guy's office when he gets this email because he's probably thinking like, why is he having to justify this to me? Like it was just late or whatever. But I didn't want to just throw some crappy excuse like I was really busy out. I just told him exactly what happened. I
Oh,
did
that
not
is
prioritize it.
phenomenal.
So and that same tried to apply that same idea to just all not only work interactions but interactions with my wife, with people at church, that I'm not going to use words to try to make myself look better because
Yeah,
that's
you're
ultimately what the
basically
lying is.
it is. It's like crafting a false reality, basically. Like if your words if words are what we use to bring about reality, essentially, and sort of like paint the world as what it is, uh, then if you do that falsely, if you say things that are not true, you're painting a false reality, and that always ends up at some point toppling over and falling apart. So if
Yes.
like you're saying, if you know that this action is going to force you to do that, it's almost lazy in a way once you realize it to say, okay, well, I know I'm going to have to do that later, but I'd rather do that than actually, do what I'm supposed to do, which is
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to pretend like that's easy. Like it just takes, all you have to do is like realize it. It still does take a lot of work. You just are conceptualizing what you already know to be true in a different way. Like, you should, prioritize, payroll or whatever. And this is just another way of looking at it, but it doesn't really make it easier. It still is like, I have to use that energy to do that payroll, even though I don't want to.
Yeah.
But if you know that you're going to violate your conscience, which has been something that I've really been thinking about, is like dialing up my conscience to like 11,
Yeah.
to just like anything that could be considered a lie. I'm like, I really see it coming. Which just sounds like what you were doing basically, is like, if I know I'm going to have to lie, that's a violation of my conscience, which means that this action is a violation of my conscience. It's like
Yes.
it's like a chain effect, which is like, it's awesome. But it for me at least doesn't make it any easier. It just makes it more obvious. It still was a ton of energy to like motivate myself to not do that thing that will turn into a lie. And I don't know if it was for you or not, but for me, I was just like, everything that might have just like drifted by and would have been, like, well, it's not that big of a deal. For me, at work, we have these work updates that we send out every day. And on the work update is a walkthrough. And I'm just ratting myself out in case my boss watches this, but whatever. You can basically, you write that every day each shift is supposed to do a walkthrough of the building. And it's pretty much a pointless walkthrough because everything in our building is monitored. So if anything breaks, you're going to know about it in an email in like a second. But the walkthroughs are kind of just like keep us busy if it's slow. Like we do a walkthrough, maybe you'll see a light that is out or something and you can fix it. So sometimes I will have, my walkthrough on my work update from yesterday, and I'll just leave it there, and I'll go, okay, well, I'll do it at some point. Sometimes the day goes by and I don't do it, but I just copy and paste, and I, send out my work update, and it has, walkthrough all good on it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that is such a minor thing to me and to everyone else, because whether or not I did it doesn't matter, because nothing broke in the data center, or whatever. But it's a lie because this is I guess the opposite of what you were saying. I'm lying essentially about my action. So I didn't do my walkthrough, and it looks better on. So it's either going to do two things. I'm either going to be motivated to do the walkthrough, or I'm going to be embarrassed by not including that I did do the walkthrough on my work update. Both of those are acceptable. And what I found myself doing was, if I didn't have time to do the walkthrough, or if I just was lazy or whatever, I would exclude it and I would just not have it on there. So I'm supposed to do it, but it was like, okay, well, I'm just going to tell the truth. And so I did sort of the opposite of what you did. So you were like, I didn't prioritize it and I'm going to do it because I don't want to have to lie about it. For me, I was like, I still don't want to do it. So I'm not gonna do it, but I'm not gonna include it on my work update, and I'm gonna say like I didn't do it, and then I'm kind of just gonna, because it just, so for me it does seem like an unnecessary task. We literally do one work update every shift, and we have 3 shifts, so that's 3 walkthroughs a day every day, and that is so overkill for the amount of monitoring we have. So in my head I was thinking, well, is it telling the truth more for me to not do something I feel like I shouldn't be doing and then just sort of exclude it? And by excluding it, I'm telling the truth about the fact that I don't want to do it. So like, it was such a bizarre twisted thing, but I was like, it would be the easy thing for me to do, besides obviously just doing the walkthrough, which I still do. It's just every day it is undoubtedly overkill. So the easy thing for me to do is just to do it because it's part of my job. Yeah. But it really is sort of optional. It's not something that's mandatory. It's like, if you have time, do it. We kind of want you to do it every day, but literally they want one person to do it every day, and we've been doing it like 3 times a day. But the desire is to just include it on your work update because everything in the data center is fine,
right?
And it looks better if you did more work, even if so if you could add something on your work update that's like trivial, but it makes your work update look like you did more work, then it's like a win-win for you. So like, again, my options are do the work up, or do lie about it basically, or exclude it, which is what I ended up doing, or actually do the walkthrough. But I felt like the walkthrough was something I didn't need to do, and because it kind of is optional. So really, the truth telling for me ended up being the fact that I didn't do it and excluded it from my work update. And so it made me look like I was doing less work, which technically is true. But I felt like that was a better thing to do than to just do the work update, because it sort of felt like, in this weird twisted way, that doing the work and including it would be like a form of a lie. And the reason I think that, to give you some backstory, is there's this Peterson, I think it's Peterson, clip that I watched a long time ago, where he said that you shouldn't do things at work that like you feel is like violates like what you think you should be doing. Like, you should speak your mind or whatever. And it's hard to do that because a lot of times I just feel like I should just do what I'm told. And I really have shifted. I used to be a lot more vocal about things I didn't like. And I started to get to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I'm told. But there are a few things that really bothered me. And one of them is doing things that don't need to be done, just to like kill time. I just feel like it's inefficient. And even though I'm getting paid to do it, it seems wrong to do things that don't need to be done. Like, there must be something better for me to do. And I think doing nothing would be better for me to do than to just kind of, carry a heavy object to and from somewhere and set it back down and say I did work. It doesn't make sense. And so that's kind of how I felt about work updates, and it's how I felt when they told us we had to wear uniforms for no reason. We don't see any customers, and I thought, like, that's weird. I ended up not making the uniform thing a big deal, but it was weird to me. I thought, why are they making us wear uniforms? Like, there's no reason for it. It seems like just a thing that's coming down from the top that I don't like, that seems weirdly like authoritarian and bureaucratic. But I was like, you know what? I'll let that one go. But so the work update thing, I decided I'm just not going to do it, or when I do it, I'll include it. And that was my form of like going back and forth on telling the truth. Because I don't know if it makes a lot of sense, but it did seem like a violation of my conscience to do it, because it is optional, and it seems like a waste of time. So that was a little bit of a weird one, because my boss is basically saying like, yeah, I want you guys to do it, but it was like optional. And the lie would, I guess, have been to include it, and the truth would be to either do it or omit it from my work update, which I chose the latter. So it made me look worse, but I felt like it was a better thing for me to do, which is weird. It's like I should probably just do it, make it look like I was busier, but it felt like a violation. So I didn't do it, which is weird. And I didn't get in trouble, and I didn't have to do excess work. So I guess win. I don't know.
It seems like you did the right thing. Yeah. So okay, so did my conception of telling the truth kind of make sense?
Yes, yes, perfectly, actually. So the way I conceptualized it, to see if this makes sense, was, like I kind of already mentioned, I dialed my conscience up to 11, which I don't know if that's a good way of describing it, but I was just hyper aware of anything that I wasn't 100% certain on. And anytime I said or did anything that I wasn't 100% certain on, it felt like I was violating my conscience. So that was how I determined what was true and what was not true.
Yeah.
So obviously, like hyperbole and being precise is easy, because if you're not precise, it's easy to know that you're being vague, or you're not sure what you're saying. But it was easy for me, I would say, to know that I was not telling the truth, or to know that I was telling the truth. And I assume it probably was for you too, right?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
to me, it was just like, I don't know, the only instances where I caught myself not lying but being hyperbolic, which was a form of a lie, was with Taylor. I don't know if you had issues like at work and stuff, but the only issues I had was when I was really comfortable with someone, like with Taylor. This actually came about after you told me one of the things you were having, like, struggling with was saying things like, oh, you always do that, or you have plenty of time, or whatever. And as soon as you said that, it just like shined a light, or shone a light, shined, yeah. It whatever. I don't know. There was a light shone on on that part of my life, and everything I said to Taylor was like, I had to be like very careful about it, and I caught myself saying things like, you all, like, I think the example I had that I might have texted you, I don't remember, was that I said something like, you have plenty of time, or like so I said that I was tired, and she's a stay-at-home mom right now, and I was like, she was giving me a hard time for being tired, and I was like, well, you can sleep whenever you want, which is just like completely false, completely hyperbolic, and just completely untrue. And I just immediately was like, I can't believe I said that, and that's such a stupid thing to say, which I think I might have even admitted as I said it, like, okay, that's not true, and that was stupid for me to say. But man, imagine what your marriage would be like if you didn't say things like that ever again. It's just amazing.
So to me, this may seem obvious now that I say it, but like the biggest or the most drastic things I noticed were just how precise speech better guides your conversations. So just to go back, so the way I see truth is that it is a guiding mechanism. Speaking words of truth guides your action. So speaking precisely, I think, is just a subcomponent that it's like it guides your actions better, or more precisely, more accurately.
I agree.
So yeah, that was definitely one of the first things I wanted to mention, was just speaking precisely in conversations makes all conversations, but potentially touchy conversations, go so much smoother. And this is especially true in marriage, but would also apply elsewhere. And like, so to the thing that you just said, that speaking precisely causes you to, or forces you to avoid those, so Amy and I call them marriage words, so that you never, because those are necessarily untrue. No one does something, never does something, or can sleep whenever. And so, like, the minute that you just leave those completely out of your vocabulary, like, already that will make every conversation that is about something that's potentially touchy go better.
Mm-hmm.
And the second gain in conversation, and again, the most where this shines the brightest is in marriage stuff, but is speaking precisely causes you to focus precisely on the crux of the matter. And oftentimes, like, when the emotions get ramped up, like, your words drift to things that are not relevant to what is actually the crux of that conversation. So, like, you might bring up past offenses, or something in this specific conversation that just annoyed you, and maybe it's a valid, maybe they're valid offenses, but they're not actually what the purpose of the conversation is.
Yeah.
So when you commit yourself to speaking precisely, like, you just want to talk about the actual issue at hand, which that just automatically de-escalates, all of the kind of the emotions that build when you just kind of speak precisely about what is actually what's actually important, whatever the issue is at hand. I don't know if you felt that way too.
I did. one of the things that I was interested to find out was, did Amy sort of do this experiment with you, or did she kind of find herself um, like trying to be more precise and telling the truth? Because one of the things that I've experienced is, as a married man, much like yourself, is that doing these experiments, is fine if you do it, but it's weird to have a conversation with your wife where she's not exactly on the same page. So you're trying to be like really specific and really precise, and in my case, she was kind of not playing that same game, so it made it difficult to. It's probably much easier if you and your wife are both trying to be precise and specific. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know
So
if
I mean, yes, she didn't specifically join me on that project, but so well, that was another point that I had. That so I'm curious to know if you noticed at all. But to me, it's like it it sort of elevated her speech as well. That like you kind of so you like when you hear any type of like emotional arguments between people, they're often displayed on TV. It's like it's clearly a vicious cycle, right? So someone says something that's a little hyperbolic, a
Yep.
little mean, and then the other person responds in kind. And to me, precision is what kind of breaks through that vicious cycle,
Yeah.
and kind of creates a cycle of itself. That if you're just committed to like avoiding hyperbolic emotional statements, it's gonna have a de-escalating effect on the conversation, and will hopefully elevate the speech of all parties involved. Now,
Hmm.
it's obviously not like guaranteed that that's going to happen. But so just to answer your question, she did specifically join me in like the month of February. I'm gonna follow up with her to find out if she even really
She
noticed any difference in
turns out
my.
she was lying to you the whole time. Yeah,
Yeah,
I bring that up because yesterday I sort of like I haven't been giving it the same mental capacity that I did during
yeah,
February.
yeah. Same
I'm
here.
I'm clearly not still not trying to lie or anything, but it definitely is not on the forefront of my mind like it was. But and I don't mean to like call Taylor out, but I don't think she'd care. But because we were talking yesterday, and there was something that we were talking about, and I was admitting that I didn't know, and she was lying about like clearly lying about knowing, in kind of like a very obvious husband wife. I want to be right because it's embarrassing to be wrong thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that haven't done that all the time. I'm just saying it was a very clear example yesterday, and I just was like, just tell the truth. And so like I literally just said that. I was like, stop lying, just tell the truth. And again, this is just a marriage thing. This isn't like Taylor's a liar or anything. This was like
Right.
one
Yeah.
of those situations where neither of you wants to be wrong. And
Yeah.
but I was coming from it from like, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure you're wrong. And she was just like, I'm right. And I was like, that does not. So it was just one of those things that I was like, this is interesting because unless both of you are on the same page, it's just going to always result in like the person who's trying to get to the truth, like calling out the person who's lying, which isn't really a healthy marriage thing. So it might be one of those things where, again, in the vein of telling the truth, you might have to have a conversation with your wife and say like, we
Yes.
have to get on the same page about telling the truth because otherwise I'm going to be like jumping down your throat forever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just was curious if that was something that happened naturally with you, or like for me and Taylor, it's usually not an issue at all. It just once or twice we've had a thing where I've been like, I don't know the answer to that, and you're saying you do, but I can tell you don't. So like we should just both admit we don't know and look it up. So I just it's one of those things where in the vein of telling the truth, probably should just have that conversation beforehand. But I was wondering if it sort of just unfolded that you guys both ended up over the month of February telling the truth. But I don't think Taylor, verbally agreed to anything for the month of February. But I don't remember anything in the month of February where we had had any issues, conflicting issues with me
Yeah.
trying to
Because
get to the truth and her having. So I don't remember anything like that. It just the one example yesterday kind of brought that up. I was like, oh, I wonder if Ben and Amy had any issues like that where he was like, tell the truth, stop
I
it.
don't. Nothing specific comes to my mind, so I wouldn't doubt that happened. But
Yep.
yeah,
So
yeah. Another thing on the topic of just having precise speech to guide your conversation is I did feel that. So I'm curious to know if you felt this way too. I did feel like a greater sense of the outcome of the conversation.
Right, you cut out. What did you say? A greater sense of what?
A greater sense of responsibility for the outcome of the conversation. That like
Hmm.
if a conversation didn't go well and maybe turned into a dispute, like I was immediately playing like Monday morning cornerback on all the things I said. Like, okay, was that imprecise? Was that
Hmm.
and which to me was really is really freeing because it's well, yeah, it's always good when you feel like you have autonomy. And so it just like the injunction to speak precisely, it just feels like it gave me more, it gave me a better, I feel like can contribute better in conversation. And it kind of goes back to what you had originally said. It was like when you're, uh, when you're committed to not pretending like you know something when you don't, like when you do know it, you're that much more certain of it. So now, like I feel when I'm in a conversation, I'm responsible for me being precise in my words. Gives me responsibility over the outcome of the conversation. That's kind of how that's the general feeling that like if it does escalate into this the kind of the emotional cycle or kind of does something, it goes off the tracks. This happens like in work meetings, for example. It goes off the tracks in a way that is not productive. I can always look at the words I said to find out where I could have been more precise or uh, not said something that made the conversation go awry. So I don't know. Do you feel that same way?
I can't think of anything specific. The only thing that sort of rings sort of relatively true to that for me was, um, just thinking back, like I always have Peterson's like levels of truth in my head when I think about what's true. So it sounds like you had a more specific conceptualization of what was true than me. I was kind of just like, oh, there's levels of truth, and it's up to me to decide which are which. But um, one of the things that I always was aware of is that scenario where like your wife asks if the dress makes her look fat. So if the
Hmm.
dress does make her look fat, depending on how you answer that, is what's true. So saying yes, that dress makes you look fat, may be true on one level, but it might be false on another level, like an emotional level, or like depending on how you say it. So if I said um, yeah, that dress makes you look fat, like, so that's a true statement, but the way that I said it is not true. True in a moral sense, I guess you could say.
Yes.
Um, so if something goes off the rails for me, I was kind of aware of being both precise in my speech and how I was saying what I was saying. So if something did go off the rails in like a marital conversation or something, it was like, did I tell the truth, but I told it in a way that was technically true but morally false? So that's kind of how I conceptualized it.
Mm.
It wasn't that I like, I like went back and said like, oh, did I like, how did I mess that up? I was always kind of conscious of the fact that it wasn't solely important that I say exactly what is true, like literally, but also emotionally, which helps
Yeah.
with the marriage, helps a lot with that, because you can't just, again, with the dress thing, yes, that dress makes you look fat, like you can't just say that,
Right.
and that is a form of a lie, in my opinion, which I think there's pretty good evidence to support that. So, because I was having some conversations with people. I don't remember anything specific, but I someone on Instagram had posted a poll or something, which I thought was nicely timed. It was about like whether or not it was, um, I think they actually read Sam Harris's book about lying, which I have not read, or telling the truth. I haven't read that, but he read it, posted it, and he said something like, "Is it ever okay to lie?" That was his poll, and I said no. And I think he said something like, what about when you're hiding Nazis? And this is
Mm.
like the much greater example of does the dress make me look fat? Which is like where you can tell a lie, but it's a moral truth that trumps the literal truth. So that's where the different levels come in for me, where it's like I don't have any problem telling a lie when the moral truth far outweighs the literal
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just shoehorn that into my own structure.
Okay.
That lying about the Nazis. Okay. That is so if so this is kind of Kant's famous example because Kant was basically against all forms of lying. That there's never a situation when it's okay to lie, which I'm not. I'm not in that camp.
So
Much
including
like yourself.
he would say you have
Yeah, so
to.
he used the example himself. Like, it's not like someone kind of confronted him with this. He said, even if so your friend comes up to your door and says, "Help! I'm being chased by a murderer. Hide me in your," and then he hides in your house, and then the murderer comes to the door and says, "Hey, I'm looking for your friend. I'm going to kill him." Kant says that you can't lie and say he's not there.
He's a truth essentialist.
Yeah, yeah. So again, to bring that back to my paradigm, it's like, okay, there are words that you can say about what was or what is. That's kind of factual truth. And then there's words that you can say about what could be, about like the future reality. So like, this is the perfect example to say the person comes to your door, the factual truth, and they ask where your friend is. The factual truth is that your friend is hiding. And it would be a factual lie to say, no, he's not hiding there. But the truth that you're bringing, like you're looking out for your friend's well-being. So your words are actually preserving his life. So it's like bringing out a better reality, bringing about a better reality for him. And so that's the moral truth that you talk about.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So most of the stuff I already went over, but one of the notes I had was that I don't know if we did was sometimes you have to speak when you don't want to. So I had that most of the time you have to shut up and not say anything. But one other like side of that is that sometimes you have to say things when you don't want to. So that's probably way more difficult for you than it is for me, I imagine, just based on like me knowing your personality. You're not like a super what's the word? You're like conflict avoidant, I would say. I don't know.
Yeah, conflict avoidant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like not really. I really don't have much of a problem with saying things that I probably shouldn't say, or I guess I probably should say, even when it's not great to say it. But did you find any instances where you like felt that you needed to say something because it was considered telling the truth, where you otherwise might have not said anything?
That is absolutely probably the hardest thing for you correctly diagnosed me that with this project. That's probably the hardest thing for me. And this it's something that is really apparent at work, anyways. Because so I manage a small team of like 4, and you have to be willing and able to give negative or corrective feedback in order, just for the for them as an individual and for the health of the team and the organization. And I find myself wanting to just avoid that altogether, which is not telling the truth. And so uh, I would say I probably did this. Like, this is probably where I failed the most, in that I still will like. And this goes back to the dragon thing. I'll still like avoid saying something, and then like that'll like
That'll
probably
work
should have
itself
corrected
out.
him, but it'll work itself out. And then in reality, we know how that
Yeah.
goes. It turns into a dragon.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with that sentiment, and I don't have anything more to add other than that is something I struggle with because of my conflict avoidance.
Yeah, I don't think I can think of any specific examples except the SU thing. But that is a little more broad, so I don't think it really counts because you can't speak about. I was thinking like there has to be a balance between like what's noise that you feel the need to speak about to tell the truth and what's like directly affecting you that you should tell the truth about. So like I'd say that Syracuse University nonsense could be considered noise that I probably could have just avoided or turned off if I wanted to, although I felt very compelled not to. So, maybe that was my conscience telling me to get involved for whatever reason, which is why I did it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what in that instance, what would create the obligation for you to speak? So like in my situation, I have an obligation to my employer, and as a manager, that I'm going to do what's best for the company, what's going to create the most profit, and so because I have that obligation, it would actually be a lie for me not to speak when I
Yes.
know I should. But like in that instance, like, do you feel a wider obligation to humanity?
Yeah, so I can tell you exactly why I made the videos that I made, and that is because I saw exactly 0 people telling the truth about that situation. And I
Yeah.
felt that that would kill me inside if. So I did a poll on Instagram. No one was really keeping up on it, which means that the people who saw what they saw was misinformation and just nonsense and noise. So when I looked into it, I was like, this is ridiculous. Newspapers aren't telling the truth by omission, local newspapers and national ones. And they're making it seem like, someone died on campus when it was just graffiti. And it seemed like there was this nefarious, professor involvement. And it just, I didn't like it. And I really didn't like that people I knew closely were like sharing it as if the students were right when they were clearly in the wrong as far as I was concerned. So I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I have what I need to put the truth out there. And all I can say is that I, did that. And if I did it, I'll be happy. I don't care what comes of it, but I had to tell the truth about it because, like I said, exactly 0 people were doing that. And it was local and my friends were involved in it in that they were posting about it. And I just felt like, I don't know, my conscience was just like screaming at me saying, like, you need to tell the truth about this, even though it's going to be unpopular or whatever. So that's why I did it. Like I said, it was probably more work than it was worth. But for what it's worth, I had professors reach out to me from SU saying that they felt the exact same way. 2, technically. 1 that doesn't work there anymore and 1 that does. And, many people reached out to me and said that they agreed with me and that they were happy that I did that, including Amy. Thanks, Amy. And you, of course, obviously.
Yes.
So I don't know. I felt like it felt necessary. And there was a small amount of risk. Now it doesn't seem like there was because it's all over, basically. But, I didn't know what would happen. And I was, it probably would have been easier for me to not do that and, avoid whatever could have come. But
Yeah.
nothing came. So it was great. I got to tell the truth as I saw it, and nothing ever came of it, thankfully. So, although I was supposed to go on, SU has like a little campus news organization, TV news organization called Citrus News, which is kind of a funny name.
Oh.
Citrus, yeah, like for orange. And they were looking for someone to come on their show and actually in person vocally disagree with Not Again SU because they couldn't find anyone to do that. And I messaged them on Twitter and was ready to go. And then they shut it all down because of coronavirus and immediately.
Yeah.
But if it goes back up, I will go on the show and vocally disagree.
That would be great.
So yeah, I was like, heck yeah, I'll do it. Like this is like, if no one else will do it, literally no one else will represent the other side, which is full of truth, and the other side that I'm against is just full of massive amounts of lies, then I will be the one to do it if I have to be the one to do it without question. Even though it almost completely doesn't involve, I mean, it doesn't involve me at all, basically, with the exception of, looking down into the future and looking at how these people are going to affect society if they get their way. And, that affects me in some proximity, but other than that, it doesn't affect me at all, other than the fact that it's in Syracuse. But I felt compelled, and that's all I can tell you. 0 people telling the truth. I felt like I had to be at least 1. So
yeah, well, no, I definitely appreciate and sympathize with that sentiment, because if you just zoom out on this conversation a little bit and talk about like truth on just the scale of humanity, like everyone is communicating with each other, all throughout the globe. And if to the extent that people are telling the truth, the best information in all of those conversations is going to like rise to the top and is going to be elevated and illuminated. And that's why the more people telling the truth, the more the best information will rise to the top.
Right.
It's just like same way economics works. Like the more transactions are happening, the more the best companies are going to rise to the top. I think truth sort of has the same element. And so that you perceived a situation where only lies were being discussed, that like you felt an obligation to like, wait, okay, there's some like market inefficiency in words right now. And
that's a good way of putting
my
it.
obligation to kind of correct for that.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Because I definitely did observe a market for the truth, I guess you could put it. Like it's like you look at a situation and you're like, no one is telling the truth here, which is a great opportunity for me to tell the truth. In the same way that there's a good, it's an opportunity for me to start a business when there's a market opening. It's like there's a void there that needed to be filled, and I don't know why. So I felt qualified to fill that void, in that I have some knowledge in all of that nonsense, all the social justice
Yeah.
nonsense. So I felt qualified because I feel bad for older people that aren't in this nonsensical, you know chaotic social justice nonsense, because they don't know how to deal with. And I felt like that was what was happening at SU, is that I feel like the administration doesn't know exactly what they're dealing with. And I
Yes.
can't blame them. I feel like they think that they're doing the right thing because they believe that black people are oppressed or whatever, but they don't really fully understand the ideology the way that I do, or you do, or these professors do. And so they're probably just like, what the heck is happening? Every time we try to help these people, it gets worse, and they're attacking us. And like, they're probably confused a little bit. And so they're just going to keep catering, to their demands. And it's hard to watch, but I really think it stems from them not really understanding the way they need to understand. So that was, again, part of the motivation in making
Yeah.
the second video about the professor and what she believes and what her goals are. Because I don't think that any of those administration know what she teaches in her classes.
Yeah.
They think it's some, racial studies or whatever, but they don't understand intersectionality, I would assume. And if they do, they're probably for it. They're probably, excited that she's doing what she's doing. So those who are ignorant are like, what the heck is happening? And those who are for it are like cheering it on. So yeah, it's kind of a mess, but I'm kind of curious how this will end, because the students were still in that building even after SU was shut down, and they stayed till the end of, I think, the end of the month. Well, no, that doesn't make any sense. They stayed for like 31 days, but
Hmm.
they were in there long after everybody was gone. So it was kind of like some Darwinism going on. It's like that's just natural selection right there.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was thinking about how I was totally blew that up. I wonder if come August or whatever that's gonna come
Yeah,
back to the
I
surface, or
suspect it will, because there's a single-minded people that their sole priority is now their identity. Their identity is completely wrapped up in their activism. So without that, it's like if your identity was in your business and your business closed, you wouldn't know what to do with yourself. You would just try to open another business. So that's kind of the same thing I see here. Is they're in the business of activism, and there will be controversies, because that's how they survive and thrive.
yeah.
Like a virus. Well, is there anything else you want to add? We could probably end it. Um, it was nice
No.
to sync up with you, because we hadn't. It's been a month since we did this. It's been 2 months basically since we decided to do this.
Yeah.
So it's nice to finally catch up. I probably forgot a few things, to be honest, as my mind has been filled with coronavirus and other things.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
But
I was looking back through my notes, and it was like, oh yeah, that happened and that happened. I might
yeah.
I might type up a little,
Oh, sorry, you
and I would
dropped out there. Type
oh
up what?
I might type up a little summary, in which case I'll share that with you,
Yeah, I'd like to
because I
see that.
definitely didn't touch on all the things that
Yeah, and I
uh,
probably, like I said, could have been more prepared in that. I definitely journaled a lot throughout that month. So things that came up, I wrote down, and I didn't prepare those for this, mostly because I just wanted to chat with you, and I felt like it'd be a little bit more natural, since you and I are pretty good at talking to each other.
yeah.
So
We should definitely do this again.
yeah, I would like to, actually. We should pick another topic. I think, especially, it's good to have return guests, because then we could pick up on things that we talked about that we didn't, or things that we
Yeah.
started to talk about but didn't quite finish. Then people could follow along with that. I think that'd be fun.
Y-
So
Yeah, actually I'm working. I'm almost done with my, I think I mentioned this to you, with my I kind of wrote an essay on diversity, and it was actually partly inspired by just the work that you were doing
oh, nice.
in this matter, and it was very similar motivations, in that, like, I was hearing a lot of things from friends that I wasn't being judgy as much as I was being like, don't think that most people have thought through this thoroughly,
Mm-hmm.
like the topic of racial diversity and what it means and what it produces in society. And so I've typed this essay, which I probably won't share widely, mainly because I will instantly be labeled a part of the white patriarchy. Uh,
100%. Yeah.
but you're one of the first persons I want feedback on it,
Yeah,
and
I'd love to
like
read it.
even if it wasn't recorded, I'd love to talk to you about it. So
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you do want to record it, I would love to do that as well.
yeah,
It's one of my favorite things to talk about for whatever reason. That and gender. Although I'm sure
uh,
that'll somehow get lumped in, but
yeah. I tried uh, to have it be palatable to ears who were maybe not on my side of the issue, and I don't know if I've achieved that or not. But I've had my thinking corrected in a few ways. One of my favorite things is that it hone in your thinking and your
yeah.
thoughts. And there's
Yeah.
actually a point in the precision thing is that like uh, when you determine that you're gonna speak precisely, you're like forced to think precisely. And so like you actually have to think through things really thoroughly. And so writing does this. When you write about something, it you realize that you have to actually contend with issues and matters and work things out. So that's the reason why I like writing. I usually don't share with anybody, but this one is because it's so topical. I think that you'll appreciate it. I think we
Yeah.
could have
Well,
a good
I am
conversation.
looking forward to it. And this just made me think sort of related to what you just said, but I was thinking, I don't know, make sure I can articulate this properly because it just like fluttered into my head and almost left. But I was thinking about how telling the truth has shaped who I admire and who I have started to really dislike. Um, so prior to really focusing on telling the truth, I might have admired anyone that I felt told the truth most of the time and ignored when they didn't because they said the things I like most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm finding that I am disgusted by people who say things I like sometimes and just, say other things other times when it's expedient politically or
Yeah.
otherwise. And so I like cannot stand just to give you a name, like Candace Owens right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't follow her on Twitter, but she keeps showing up in my in my feed. And I'm just like disgust. So if you like 6 months to a year ago, I might have said like, yeah, I don't really like her, but like she says like really important things that I like. Now I'm like, I don't want to see her ever again. Like I don't care if she says the
Yeah.
things I like. She's so clearly saying things that are trying to get her ahead.
Yeah.
Because you can see her shift and weave and dodge and say things that make her, contrarian or whatever. And so she's not her motivation isn't to tell the truth maybe she thinks it is, but her motivation to me clearly is to say things that will make her noticed and more popular. And it always seems to start with people that get popular based on these, political avenues. They always appear that they're telling the truth. The conservatives are always like, man, she's really telling the truth. Like, Tommy
Mm-hmm.
Lahren or whatever. All these people, well, she says things that we're not allowed to say. And then as soon as they hit the pinnacle, then then you can see them start to really, they don't, and then they say things that people want to hear. So it goes from like, wow, she's really saying things that you can't say to, oh, okay, she's really just saying things that, her
Yes.
giant base now wants to hear. And so telling the truth completely goes out the window. And that's something I admire most about the intellectual dark web is that those people, particularly Sam Harris makes a point to he says if there's something in his comment section that everyone really is going hard on, then he'll purposely focus more on the opposite to like make them even more mad because he doesn't want to be like kowtowing to his audience.
Yeah.
It's more important that he tells the truth. And so I'm just like really hyper aware right now of these like mostly political people that are in not politicians, but they're commentators and like Candace Owens, and I'm just like disgusted by them. I'm like, I lose respect almost instantly for people who are just sacrificing telling the truth for keeping their base happy and
Yeah.
And it really bothers me right now for some reason. So I'm just like, oh,
Yeah, no,
God.
I'm totally with you. The phrase that we hear a lot lately is like in good faith. Like that is so important that what
Yeah.
the people who are acting in bad faith, it's you're just doing something for your own benefit, or
Yes.
like you said, you're weaving uh your own reputation, your own
Yep.
finance to the things you're saying,
Right.
and but when you're speaking the truth and in good faith, then
Right.
it's for truth's sake,
Yep.
not for anything else.
Yep. Well, on that note, I guess we'll call it a podcast.
Okay.
Ben, thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk with me about telling the truth.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
All right. We'll do it again very soon, hopefully. We'll see you.
Okay.
All right.
See ya.